Hey everyone, and welcome to my channel. My name is Mia, and this is Creepy Time. I'm brand new to YouTube, so I thought I might highlight of what I have to offer. I am going to be talking about everything creepy, from medical anomalies to the paranormal to conspiracy theories. You're gonna find it here. So I do want to have like a brief disclaimer that typically I talk about things in my videos that might be triggering. Today's video is going to be very heavily medically based, and I'm going to go into, like I said, medical terminology, and it's going to be pretty descriptive of what patients experience. So if that bothers you, then please kindly skip this video. And I do also want to say that none of the research or information or studies is mine. I do not have any claim to it whatsoever. What I'm talking about is things that I have just been researching in my own free time on Google and YouTube for any period of time, years. So I do not want to claim any of the information as my own. So today's topic that we're going to be talking about is a disease called Morgellons, or Morgellons, depending on how you want to pronounce it, but Morgellons syndrome. And this is kind of, how would you say it? Kind of creepy. So Morgellons syndrome is a disease that happens to a person, and it is described as miserable. The symptoms of this disease are typically itching all over your body, open, like ulcerative sores all over your body, and extreme fatigue. And what makes this disease so interesting and also so controversial is that patients with this syndrome will find fibers inside of the open sores on their bodies. So basically, a typical day for somebody with this disease is they feel like there are insects crawling all underneath their skin, all in their, all over their body, in their mouth, just everywhere, and they'll scratch because it's very, very itchy. They'll develop boils on their body without pustules. So just raised red bumps that they'll continue itching, and eventually what happens is either the bump, the boil, will open on its own, revealing fibers inside, or the fibers will start poking through the skin themselves. The fibers are multicolored. They're not one color. They're multicolored. Reds, blues, greens, yellows, blacks, just very, very unique looking. They're flat almost in appearance, and they're very long and can also present themselves in like bundles and clusters. Basically, like you're unwinding and unraveling thread from your own body. When this first started happening, naturally, patients were horrified. They didn't know what was happening to them, and they consulted their physicians. Well, their physicians didn't quite take them seriously, to put it mildly. These patients were not taken seriously. When they went to the doctor would take, like his otoscope, his light, and look at the sores and see nothing. the patients would leave more confused than when they got there. Where they started, they were left lost. And slowly but surely, more and more people were coming forth with the same symptoms: extreme fatigue, feeling of insects crawling, extreme itching, boils, sores, fibers. So patients and people, continued going to doctors and continued getting dismissed. This divided the medical community in two: those that didn't believe that this was real and those that did. And the patients were struggling to find people to believe them. So almost in a sense of advocacy, the physicians and professors that did believe these patients embarked on this research expedition to find out what the heck was going on. Meanwhile, these patients are stuck in limbo, being, classified as psychotic and prescribed, medication to treat psychosis, and being told that they have delusional parasitosis, which is basically like, you're having delusions of insects crawling, on you. They're being told that, they have drug problems because, as we know, some illicit substances can cause you to feel or believe that you have insects inside of you. They're being told that the fibers that they're finding are, little cottons from their clothes, blankets, Band-Aids, you name it. They're being told that their fatigue is stress, and vitamins, you take supplements and eat better, and you name it. These people were told it, right? Now, the professors and the physicians that were their advocates were busy working. We're really hard at work trying to find a root cause and a root source. There's this one professor, and I'm going to pronounce his name wrong, so please forgive me. I believe it's Professor Weimer, and I don't want to say devoted his life to this, but it was his field of study, okay? He really took a lot of time, took a lot of patience, and a lot of samples, did a lot of research on his own, and decided that he should have access. He should have access to the FBI police database. So basically, this allowed him to have all of the information at his fingertips to compare these fibers to literally every fiber known to man. Everything. You name it, the FBI database has it. Cottons, plant fibers, polyesters. I can't even think of all of the types of fibers that he might have. But, they created this database so that, if somebody committed a crime and, they're doing like an autopsy, or, they find things, evidence at the scene of the crime, that they're able to compare the fibers and find out what they are, because to the naked eye, you can't tell what a fiber is just by looking at it. You're like, oh, it's a fuzz, no big deal. So he took tissue samples and just regular samples of the fibers from these patients' bodies. Like, he dissolved them, looked them under a microscope, did DNA analysis, did all these, and he compared them to the database that the FBI had. And he found that the fibers do not match anything. Not a single fiber on this earth matches with the fibers from these patients' bodies. How crazy is that? Like, to think that you have something inside of your body that is not organic, that is not of this earth. So you can imagine how that makes these patients feel. I mean, I would feel probably vindicated and validated that, look, I'm not crazy. There is something going on. And even still, though, you guys, even still, the medical community is not accepting of his research and of his evidence. They're just not. They're not willing to. And they're saying that the fibers from the patient's bodies are either, so they're saying that they're cotton, as just kind of like a blanket term. They're saying that they're cotton, or that they're like cellulose or keratin fibers. So basically, they're telling these people that are coming in with ulcerations on their bodies and weird fibers coming out of their bodies that, yeah, your body is pretty much growing its own hair inside of there. Obviously, that didn't go over well. And the more patients that came forth, the more of a stir this caused. Eventually, I believe it was the same professor that discovered that those fibers are not of organic origin. And they're not synthetic either. I should say that. I mean, literally, they're just not of this world. Like, they don't match anything, not even artificial, like fibers and like polyester and rayon, and like literally nothing. So, he was able to do more research, and eventually he was able to make a really distinct correlation. He was able to discover that, how do I phrase this? Because the two are not exactly like, so he discovered that some staggering figure, like 90%, and that's just off the top of my head, that's not exactly what he said, but something like 90% of the patients with Morgellons initially had Lyme's disease. So they were bit by a tick that was a carrier for Lyme's. They contracted Lyme's disease, were treated for Lyme's disease, and that now, sometime later, have developed Morgellons as a secondary condition. How fascinating is that? So he is trying to figure out, what is that link between the bacterium that causes Lyme's and now Morgellons? So while he is discovering all these things, the CDC decides to get involved, because the CDC and the government can't mind their own business ever. And they got wind of the stir that was being caused by this disease and by the patients, and that professors and physicians are doing all these studies. Well, now, Big Brother and the CDC want a piece of it, because they are the end-all be-all for the medical community. Basically, what they say is law, right? So the CDC got involved, and they said, okay, look, we're going to go ahead and we're going to do studies upon studies. Do we need volunteers? Everybody that says that they're affected with Morgellons, come forth, and we're going to do studies, and we're going to see what the heck is going on with you. So a bunch of patients, went and participated in these clinical trials and these studies and these, theories and all of this testing, only to, they went through all of this, only to have the CDC come back 7 years later. It took them 7 years to finally present their case study to the medical community and to the world. And when they did, they turned around and they said, there is no medical justification for these symptoms that these patients are having. There is no, they basically did not find any pathogens, any pathogenic reason for this disease and disorder. They themselves said that these patients just have delusional parasitosis, that they should seek psychiatric help, and basically that they themselves said that the fibers were cotton-like fibers. Well, that went over like a lead balloon, because after all this time and after all this suffering, these patients were not satisfied with that. These sufferers were not satisfied with that. So they basically said, to hell with the CDC. We are going to form our own community and, form a support network and a support group for ourselves. And we are going to find physicians that believe us, so that way we can have regular follow-ups and treatment for, our disease. More importantly, for the secondary conditions that follow the disease, to make sure that their Lymes didn't flare up again, to make sure that they're not getting any kind of skin infections from the scratching, to make sure that they're okay, like as okay as they can be. Now, when the CDC turned around 7 years later and said, it's nothing, don't worry about it, you're fine, yeah, whatever, you're fine, go away, that caused conspiracy theories to burst forth. Remember how I said that professor found out that those fibers were not of organic origin, okay? There are people that have come forth saying that they were abducted by aliens, that they were taken to a spacecraft by aliens, and that they had testing done to them. They had, all these horrifying things done to them. I mean, I can't even imagine. Probed, prodded, poked, cut. I can't even imagine. So they're saying that after their abduction and they were returned to Earth, that they developed Morgellons. Now, that caused a small spark in this community of people, because the one that came forth about his alien abduction was not the only one. Multiple people started coming forth about their own experiences with alien abductions and what was done to them. And they also said that they developed Morgellons after they came back to Earth. So the conspiracy theory surrounding this is that the CDC knows that these fibers are extraterrestrial, that the CDC knows that they're not of this world, they're not organic. And because what the CDC says goes, and because their word is law essentially, especially in the medical community, that's one of the biggest references that the medical community has is the CDC website for all things, all things. So because what the CDC says goes, and no one can argue it, no one of ordinary power in this world can argue with the CDC, that they're covering up the fact that these patients are developing Morgellons because or for extraterrestrial reasons, be it an abduction, be it an extraterrestrial bacterium, be it an extraterrestrial virus, be it fibers that have been left behind from extraterrestrial visits to this planet. All kinds of theories, and that the CDC is covering it up, and that the CDC is just saying that these patients are crazy and that their symptoms are psychosomatic because they don't want the information that extraterrestrial life is real to be leaked. Meanwhile, while all these arguments and all these theories and, things are circulating, these patients are still suffering. Morgellons has not been found to be fatal, has not been found to be terminal. I read an article that this lady has been suffering with it for 30 to 35 years. And that's just so saddening that we can't come together, or the medical community can't come together and understand that it's not just a person. It's thousands of people that experience the same symptoms who don't have a history of psychiatric disorders, psychiatric conditions, drug abuse. Normal people, and thousands of them suffering with this, and they can't come together as a medical community to help them. That patients have to resort to alternative medicine for relief, that they're viewed as, there's, one flew over the cuckoo's nest. I mean, that they're just dismissed. So that is the story of Morgellons, and it will always fascinate me. It will always intrigue me. It disturbs me on a level, because I couldn't imagine, having these open sores on my body. By the way, children are affected by this too. I forgot to mention that earlier. Children are affected by this too. So I just, it always fascinates me to learn about this and to read about this and to see interviews and pictures. If you guys want to type it up, it's a very phonetic spelling. Type in Morgellons, and it's 2 L's, and you can find a plethora of information and pictures and videos on like YouTube and Google and all these places. Articles upon articles written about it. You can view testimonials from patients that are suffering from it. And I'm pretty confident that you'll look at it too and, say, that doesn't really look right. It's hard to imagine how somebody could dismiss it from the videos and pictures that are shown. There's this one video I remember that you can literally watch. There's a patient, it's on his or her leg or something, and it zooms in, and you can just watch the tweezers just pulling this thread, this fiber out of their body. If you have a weak stomach, you know what? It's really not that bad. It's not gory or anything, but I mean, if you do have a weak stomach, just be aware that it's a little, it's a medical video. So, but that is the presentation of Morgellons syndrome. Again, just a quick Google search and you can eat and read your heart out about this. I really enjoy it, and it's kind of a bummer because the Discovery Channel, I haven't seen any kind of documentaries and stuff like that in a little while, so maybe they'll bring it back. But that's it. I thank you guys so much if you made it this far for watching. I will come back in a couple of days with a new, interesting, and creepy topic. Have a good night.